I'm Cassidy Harding, 34, and I never thought family betrayal would come in the form of a U-Haul truck and a forged deed. My brother Tyler's wedding at my estate was supposed to be a gesture of sisterly love. 2 weeks later, he returned with movers and documents, claiming my home was rightfully his inheritance. Little did he know I'd already uncovered their plan and had my legal team waiting. What followed would tear our family apart and reveal decades of secrets that would change everything I thought I knew about blood loyalty. Before I dive into this family revenge drama that completely turned my life upside down, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below and hit that subscribe button to join my channel, where I share the most shocking true stories about family betrayals and justice served. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how this all unfolds. Family had always been everything to me. Growing up in Hartford, Connecticut, in a modest 3-bedroom home with my parents and younger brother Tyler, I was raised to believe that nothing mattered more than the bonds of blood. Family first, always, my father would say at every Sunday dinner, his voice carrying the weight of generations of Hardings who'd lived by that same principle. I took those words to heart more than anyone. When I graduated high school at 17, I postponed college for 2 years to help care for my grandmother while she battled cancer. While my friends were partying in dorms, I was administering medication, cooking meals, and reading aloud to Grandma Rose as her eyesight failed. Tyler, 3 years younger than me, was spared these responsibilities. He's still just a boy, my mother would say, though. At 14, he was hardly a child anymore. This pattern continued throughout our lives. When our father lost his job during the 2008 recession, I dropped 2 classes at university to pick up extra shifts at the local diner. Meanwhile, Tyler's private school tuition remained untouched. "Your brother needs the connections for his future," Dad explained as I counted tips at our kitchen table. Despite it all, I never resented my role as the family pillar. I graduated with honors in business management and founded a boutique marketing firm that quickly gained recognition for its innovative campaigns. By 30, I'd saved enough to purchase a stunning Victorian home on 3 acres just outside Hartford, the dream house I'd sketched in notebooks since childhood. The 4-bedroom, 3-bath estate with its wraparound porch and original hardwood floors became my sanctuary, the reward for years of sacrifice and hard work. Tyler took a different path. After an expensive education that our parents remortgaged their home to fund, he drifted between startup ventures that inevitably collapsed within months. Each failure was met with the same response: a family meeting where I'd be urged to help your brother out. And I always did, whether it meant investing in his doomed cryptocurrency scheme or hiring him at my firm for a position he wasn't qualified for. "You're so blessed with success, Cassidy," my mother would say, her tone suggesting my achievements were merely good fortune rather than the result of determination and sacrifice. "It's only right you share your blessings with Tyler." When Tyler met Vanessa at a charity gala I'd organized and paid for his ticket to attend, I was genuinely happy for him. Vanessa came from a wealthy family with connections in real estate development. She was beautiful, sophisticated, and seemed to give Tyler the direction he'd always lacked. Within 6 months, they were engaged, and for once, Tyler seemed to be standing on his own 2 feet. "Cassidy," he said during a rare brother-sister lunch. He'd actually remembered to attend Vanessa's "Changed My Life." "I'm finally becoming the man Dad always wanted me to be." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm proud of you, Tyler." The look that passed between us felt like a new beginning, a shift toward a more balanced relationship where I might not always need to be the giver. That evening, Tyler called with what he described as the biggest favor I'll ever ask. "Vanessa and I want to get married at your house," he said. "We've toured every venue in Connecticut, but nothing compares to your place. It would mean everything to us." "A wedding is a huge undertaking," I cautioned. "The house would need preparation. The grounds would need landscaping." "I know it's a lot," Tyler interrupted, But this is my one chance at happiness, Cass. And just think how proud Mom and Dad would be seeing us come together like this. He knew exactly which buttons to push. By the end of the call, I had agreed not only to host the wedding but to cover most of the expenses as my gift to the couple. After all, what was one more sacrifice for family? The next 3 months became a whirlwind of wedding preparations. I hired landscapers to transform my already beautiful gardens into something truly magical. I replaced the living room furniture to better accommodate the indoor ceremony space. I even converted my home office into a bridal suite where Vanessa could prepare on the big day. Throughout it all, Tyler and Vanessa were strangely hands-off. They missed appointments with the caterer, arrived late to meetings with the photographer, and seemed oddly disinterested in the details of their own wedding. When I mentioned this to my mother, she waved away my concerns. They're busy with their own preparations, Cassidy. You know, looking for a place to live, planning their future. Not everyone is as organized as you. It was only later that I would understand the cruel irony of those words. They were indeed planning their future, just not in the way any of us suspected. The wedding day arrived on a perfect June afternoon. My home had never looked more beautiful, with white roses climbing the porch railings and fairy lights strung through the old maple trees. I'd spared no expense wanting this day to be perfect for my brother. As I helped my mother with her corsage, I caught a glimpse of Tyler and my father in deep conversation on the porch. Something in their manner, heads bent close, my father's hand gripping Tyler's shoulder tightly, gave me pause. But then the wedding coordinator was calling for me, and the moment passed. The ceremony was lovely if traditional. Vanessa looked stunning in a designer gown that probably cost more than my first car. Tyler seemed happier than I'd ever seen him. When they exchanged vows beneath the arch of roses in my living room, I felt a swell of pride and love for my brother. Maybe this really was his turning point. At the reception that followed on the back lawn, champagne flowed freely, and toasts rang out as the sun began to set. It was during my father's speech that I first noticed something odd. He raised his glass and with tears in his eyes said, "To Tyler and Vanessa, may you fill this beautiful home with children and create generations of memories within these walls. This beautiful home, my home." The phrasing struck me as strange, but I dismissed it as emotional rambling from a father who'd had too much champagne. If only I'd paid more attention to that slip, to the knowing looks exchanged between my parents, to the satisfied smile that played at the corners of Vanessa's perfect lips. But I was too busy being the perfect sister, the perfect host, the perfect family pillar, right until the moment my foundation crumbled. 2 weeks after the wedding, I was still finding confetti in strange corners of the house and removing the last traces of the event from my property. The cleaning service had done their best, but hosting 80 people leaves its mark. I was on my hands and knees, scrubbing a champagne stain from the hardwood in the dining room, when I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. Rising to my feet, I peered through the bay window and felt my heart skip. A large U-Haul truck had pulled up alongside 3 cars, my parents', Tyler's new BMW, a wedding gift from Vanessa's family, and a vehicle I didn't recognize. As I watched, dumbfounded, Tyler emerged from his car and began directing the U-Haul to back up closer to my front door. Confusion turned to alarm as I saw my parents exit their sedan, followed by a man in a suit carrying a briefcase. Something about their purposeful strides, the absence of phone calls warning of their arrival, sent a chill down my spine. I opened the front door just as they reached the porch steps. "Tyler, Mom, Dad, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light despite the knot forming in my stomach. My brother's face held an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of entitlement and poorly concealed triumph. "Hey, Cass. This is Roger Kleinman, our family attorney." He gestured to the suited man. "We need to talk." About what I stepped back as they entered my foyer, the group moving as a unit in a way that made me feel suddenly outnumbered in my own home. My father cleared his throat, not quite meeting my eyes. "Let's sit down, Cassidy." We moved to the living room, the same room where 2 weeks earlier I'd watched my brother exchange vows. Now, Tyler sat across from me, legs spread wide in a posture of confidence that seemed entirely foreign to the brother I'd spent a lifetime supporting. "There's no easy way to say this," Tyler began, "so I'll just be direct. This house rightfully belongs to me." The statement was so absurd that I actually laughed. "What are you talking about? I bought this house. My name is on the deed." The lawyer Kleinman opened his briefcase and removed a folder. "Actually, Miss Harding, there's been a misunderstanding about the property's true ownership." He slid a document across my coffee table, a coffee table I'd specially ordered from an artisan in Vermont. With increasing disbelief, I scanned what appeared to be a deed to my home, but with Tyler's name listed as the property owner. "This is ridiculous," I said, pushing the paper away. "This is obviously fake. I have the real deed in my safe." "The situation is more complicated than you realize, Cassidy." My mother interjected her voice, taking on the placating tone she'd used throughout my childhood when asking me to give up something for Tyler's benefit. "Your grandfather always intended this property to go to the male heir of the family." I stared at her, uncomprehending. "What are you talking about, Grandpa? Frank died when I was in college." "I bought this house 5 years ago from the Hendersons." My father leaned forward. "The Hendersons were holding it in trust. Your grandfather arranged it all before he passed. The house was meant to go to Tyler when he turned 30, or got married, whichever came first." The room seemed to tilt on its axis as the implications of what they were saying sank in. "So you're telling me that the house I've been living in, the house I paid for with my own money, has secretly belonged to Tyler all along?" "Not exactly," the lawyer said, his tone measured. "The house was purchased with your funds, but under the terms of a family trust that named Tyler as the beneficiary once certain conditions were met. Those conditions have now been fulfilled with his marriage." I looked from face to face, searching for some sign that this was an elaborate, cruel joke. Finding none, I turned to my brother. "You had your wedding here knowing this. You let me renovate and landscape and pour thousands into a house you believed would be yours in 2 weeks. Tyler at least had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. I didn't know all the details until recently. Dad just told me after the engagement that the house would be coming to me as a wedding gift from Grandpa Frank." A horrible suspicion began forming in my mind. "And the moving truck outside. You just assumed I'd pack up and leave today. My entire life is here. We thought it would be easier this way," my mother said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away before she could touch me. "A clean break. We've found you a lovely condo in Hartford, very modern. Much more suitable for a single woman your age." The condescension in her voice ignited something in me. A slow-burning rage that had perhaps been building for decades of being the responsible one, the sacrificing one, the good daughter who always put family first. "Get out," I said quietly. "Cassidy, be reasonable," my father started. "Get out," I shouted, rising to my feet. "All of you, right now, before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing." The lawyer looked uncomfortable. "Miss Harding, I advise you to reconsider your position. The documentation is fake, fraudulent, or completely misrepresented." I finished for him. And any lawyer worth his salt would have verified the property records before showing up with a moving truck. "Now get off my property before I show you exactly how unreasonable I can be." Something in my voice, perhaps the absolute certainty or the barely controlled fury, made them retreat. As they filed out, Tyler lingered in the doorway. "This isn't over, Cass," he said softly. "The house is mine. Grandpa wanted it this way. The grandfather who died before I even bought this house," I challenged. "Try again, Tyler." He shrugged, a gesture so casual it made my blood boil. Check the records. The truth might surprise you. After they left, I sank onto my sofa, mind racing. Could there be any truth to their claims? Had my entire adult life been built on a foundation of family secrets and lies? With shaking hands, I called the only person I knew I could trust, my best friend and law school roommate Meredith Chen, now a partner at one of Hartford's most prestigious firms. Don't touch anything they gave you, she instructed, after I'd explained the situation. I'm on my way with a real estate attorney and a forensic accountant. And Cassidy, don't call your family. Don't respond to any messages. From this moment forward, they are not your allies. As I hung up, a text came through from my mother. We're only doing what's best for the family. Your brother needs this fresh start more than you do. In that moment, something crystallized within me, a realization that family first had always meant Tyler first, and I had been playing a rigged game my entire life. The perfect sister routine ended today. From now on, I would be the sister they never saw coming. Meredith arrived within the hour, accompanied by Harper Wells, a razor-sharp real estate attorney with a reputation for being merciless in property disputes, and Deacon Morris, a forensic accountant whose analytical mind was legendary in financial investigation circles. The three of them transformed my dining room into a war room, with laptops open, papers spread across the antique table, and a grim determination that made me feel for the first time since the U-Haul had appeared that I might not lose everything. First things first, Harper said, her fingers flying across her keyboard. I'm pulling the official property records from the county clerk's office. If there's any family trust or alternative deed, it would have to be recorded there. Deacon was already deep into my financial records, which I'd provided complete access to. I need to trace the money trail from your accounts to the purchase of this house. Every dollar needs to be accounted for. Meredith, meanwhile, was questioning me about my grandfather. Tell me everything you remember about Frank Harding. His relationship with you, with Tyler, with your parents. Any conversations about inheritance, property, family, legacy, nothing is too small. I cast my mind back, trying to separate actual memories from the family mythology that had shaped so much of my understanding. Grandpa Frank was traditional. He believed in hard work and self-reliance, but he also had definite ideas about family roles. He and my grandmother had this huge fight when I said I wanted to study business instead of education or nursing. He thought those were more appropriate fields for women. Did he ever talk about this property specifically? Meredith pressed. I shook my head. Never. He died when I was 21. I bought this house when I was 29. The previous owners, the Hendersons, were an older couple looking to downsize. I remember Mr. Henderson saying they'd lived here for nearly 15 years. Harper looked up sharply. 15 years would place their purchase around 2010, well after your grandfather passed. If they were holding it in some kind of trust arrangement, as your family claims, there would be documentation. As they worked, I paced the room, trying to piece together the fragments of this puzzle. What I don't understand is why now? Why go to all this trouble with fake documents and moving trucks? If there was some legitimate claim, why not bring it up when I first bought the house? Sometimes it's not about legitimate claims, Meredith said grimly. Sometimes it's about opportunity and desperation. Has anything changed in your family's financial situation recently? The question triggered a memory. My parents' retirement fund took a hit last year. Dad mentioned having to scale back their plans for traveling. And Tyler, despite the fancy wedding and the connections through Vanessa, I overheard him arguing with her about money during the reception. Something about promises he'd made to her family that he couldn't keep. Deacon looked up from his spreadsheets. Financial pressure is a powerful motivator for fraud, and family properties are often the target because of emotional leverage. As night fell, takeout containers accumulated and coffee was continuously brewed. The team worked relentlessly. Around midnight, Harper made a breakthrough. "I've got the complete property history," she announced. "The Hendersons purchased this house fair and square in 2010 from a development company called Lakeside Properties. They sold it to you in 2020 with a clean title. There is absolutely no record of any trust, any family connection, or any conditional ownership. The house is yours, Cassidy, free and clear." Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived. "That doesn't explain the documents they brought today," I pointed out. "Fake or not, they clearly think they have a case." Meredith's expression was troubled. "That's what worries me. Your brother didn't come up with this scheme alone. The involvement of an attorney, the specific claims about a family trust, someone has gone to considerable effort to build this narrative. I need to talk to the Hendersons," I decided. "They might remember something about the purchase that could help us." "Already on it," Deacon said, phone to his ear. "According to public records, they relocated to Arizona. I'm trying to track down current contact information." While the team continued their investigations, I retreated to my home office, the same room I'd transformed into Vanessa's bridal suite, and began my own research. I pulled out old family photo albums, letters from my grandfather that I'd kept, and a flash drive containing scanned copies of important family documents that my mother had given each of us for safekeeping years ago. It was on this drive that I found something peculiar. A scanned copy of what appeared to be a hand-drawn map of a property with my grandfather's distinctive handwriting marking boundaries and features. In the corner was a note: "The Harding legacy to be preserved for future generations through the male line as tradition dictates." The property outlined wasn't my current home, the dimensions and features were all wrong, but there was something familiar about the layout that nagged at me. I printed the map and brought it back to the dining room. "I found this," I said, placing it in front of my team. "It's not my house, but my grandfather wrote something about preserving property through the male line." Harper studied the map carefully. "These boundaries, they match a property about 5 miles from here. An old farmhouse that's fallen into disrepair. It's currently owned by—" She typed rapidly, then looked up in surprise. "Lakeside Properties, the same company that sold to the Hendersons?" I asked. Deacon was already searching public records. "Lakeside Properties, incorporated in 2008, dissolved in 2015. The principal was James Harding." "My father," I whispered. The pieces were starting to come together, forming a picture I could scarcely believe. My grandfather had indeed left property for the family, but not my house. It was the old farmhouse which had somehow come into my father's possession through his company Lakeside Properties. Instead of preserving it as my grandfather intended, my father had sold it, possibly using the proceeds to fund Tyler's education and failed businesses. "They're trying to rewrite history," Meredith concluded. "Take your success, the home you rightfully purchased, and twist it into fulfilling an obligation they already betrayed." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My family hadn't just attempted to steal my house. They were trying to cover up their own misuse of an actual family inheritance. They had sold my grandfather's legacy property, squandered the proceeds, and were now attempting to seize mine as a replacement. As dawn broke, casting long shadows through my dining room windows, we had assembled enough evidence to not only defend my ownership, but potentially bring serious legal consequences to my family. "What do you want to do?" Meredith asked gently. "We have enough to file fraud charges potentially against your parents, definitely against the lawyer who participated in this scheme." I looked around the room at the house I'd worked so hard for, thought of the family who had been willing to take it from me without a second thought, and made my decision. "I want justice," I said firmly. "But first, I want to understand exactly how deep this betrayal goes. Before we make our next move, we need to know who else is involved and what other secrets they're hiding." Little did I know the family trust deception was merely the visible part of an iceberg of lies that had shaped my entire life. The investigation was about to uncover truths that would make the attempted property theft seem almost trivial by comparison. The next morning, bleary-eyed but determined, I reviewed our findings with my legal team over breakfast. We'd spent the night piecing together a complex web of deception that spanned decades. The old farmhouse, my grandfather's actual legacy property, had been sold by my father's shell company, with the proceeds disappearing into a series of accounts, but eventually funded Tyler's education and provided capital for his failed business ventures. We have three options, Harper explained, sliding a folder across the table. 1, we file for an emergency injunction against any further attempts to claim your property, coupled with a cease and desist order. 2, we go on the offensive with fraud charges against your father, brother, and their attorney. Or 3, we set a trap. A trap, I asked, intrigued despite my exhaustion. Meredith's smile was sharp enough to cut. We let them think they're winning just long enough to get them to reveal everything. Based on what we've uncovered, this property scheme is likely just the tip of the iceberg. There could be tax fraud, misappropriation of other family assets, possibly even identity theft if they've been using your information in any way. The thought of my family committing such violations against me made my stomach turn, but I couldn't deny the evidence before me. How would this trap work? You call your brother Deacon, suggested. Tell him you've been thinking things over and want to discuss a potential compromise. Invite them here, all of them including their lawyer. We'll have recording equipment set up legally, of course, and witnesses present in another room. I considered the plan. Part of me wanted to storm into my parents' home and confront them immediately with what we'd discovered. But the strategist in me, the businesswoman who'd built a successful company through careful planning, saw the wisdom in patience. Let's do it, I decided. But I want to be prepared for every possible scenario. The next few hours were spent in intense preparation. Meredith coached me on what questions to ask and how to respond to potential accusations. Harper drafted documents that would appear to be capitulation on my part but were actually legally meaningless. Deacon set up discrete recording devices throughout the main floor of my home, all perfectly legal under Connecticut's one-party consent laws. At precisely noon, I called my brother. Cassidy, he answered, his voice a mixture of wariness and hope. I didn't expect to hear from you so soon. I've been thinking about what you said, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. About Grandpa's wishes and family legacy. I think we should talk, all of us, including your attorney. There might be a solution that works for everyone. There was a pause then. Really, that's great, Cass. I know this has been a shock, but I always said you were the reasonable one in the family. The condescension in his voice nearly made me break character, but I swallowed my anger. Can you come by around 4 today? I'll be alone. We'll be there, Tyler confirmed, unable to hide the excitement in his voice. He thought he'd won. After hanging up, I turned to my team. He took the bait. Almost too easily. People believe what they want to believe, Meredith observed. And your brother wants to believe you'll roll over for family just like you always have. At 330, my team retreated to the upstairs guest bedroom, where monitors had been set up showing feeds from the cameras downstairs. I changed into an outfit carefully selected to project vulnerability, a soft sweater, casual jeans, my hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The costume of a woman ready to concede. The doorbell rang at 4:03. I took a deep breath, checked that the recording devices were active, and opened the door to find my entire family on the porch. Tyler and Vanessa, my parents, and the attorney Kleinman, all wearing expressions of poorly concealed triumph. Come in, I said softly, stepping aside. I made coffee. They filed into my living room, taking the same seats they had occupied during our confrontation the day before. I noticed my father eyeing the crown molding with an appraising gaze, already mentally redecorating my home. I appreciate you all coming. I began settling into an armchair. Yesterday was overwhelming. But I've had time to think about what family really means. My mother reached over to pat my knee. I knew you'd come around, dear. You've always understood the importance of family harmony. It took everything in me not to flinch away from her touch. Instead, I forced a smile. Before we discuss arrangements, I have a few questions. For clarity. Kleinman shifted uncomfortably. Miss Harding, perhaps it would be best if we simply proceeded with the transfer documents. I've brought everything ready to sign. Humor me, I said, my voice hardening slightly before I caught myself. After all, this is a significant change in my life. I think I deserve to understand exactly what's happening. My father cleared his throat. Of course, of course. What do you want to know? Let's start with Grandpa Frank's original bequest. The trust document mentioned a specific property. Can you describe it to me? A flicker of unease passed between my parents. Well, my father began, it was this property. The exact boundaries might have changed slightly over the years, but that's interesting, I interrupted, because according to county records, this land was developed in 2005 years after Grandpa died. The Hendersons bought it in 2010 from a company called Lakeside Properties. I tilted my head. Your company, Dad. The room went very still. Kleinman tugged at his collar. These historical details aren't really relevant to the current situation, Miss Harding. Oh, but they are, I countered, because I'm trying to understand how a property that didn't exist when Grandpa Frank died could have been left in trust for Tyler. My mother jumped in. What your father meant was that the proceeds from your grandfather's original property were meant to be used to establish a home for Tyler. This house represents the fulfillment of that intention. The proceeds, I repeated slowly. From the old farmhouse on Willow Creek Road, the one Dad sold through Lakeside Properties. Tyler looked confused. What farmhouse, Dad? What is she talking about? The momentary flash of panic in my father's eyes confirmed what we'd suspected. Tyler wasn't fully aware of the scheme. He was both perpetrator and pawn. There's been some confusion, my father said stiffly. The important thing is that the family assets are being properly distributed according to tradition. Tradition, I echoed. You mean the tradition of the male heir receiving everything while the daughter gets nothing, even when that daughter is the one who actually purchased the property with her own hard-earned money? Vanessa spoke for the first time, her voice sharp. You've had advantages that Tyler never had, Cassidy. Your business success, your financial stability, some of us have had to struggle. I turned my attention to my sister-in-law. Speaking of struggles, Vanessa, I understand your family's real estate development company is facing some difficulties. A failed project in Boston. Something about permits being denied after significant investment. Her perfect features froze. How did you? Public records, I replied smoothly. Just like the public records that show this house is legally mine, purchased with funds from my business accounts, with absolutely no connection to any family trust. My father slammed his hand on the coffee table. Enough of this, Cassidy. You called us here to discuss terms, not to interrogate us about matters you don't understand. Actually, I said, rising to my feet, I called you here to give you one chance to tell me the truth. About this scheme, about what happened to Grandpa Frank's real property, and about why you've spent my entire life treating me like a support system for Tyler rather than a daughter in my own right. The room erupted into protests and denials exactly as I'd anticipated. I let them talk over each other for a moment, watching as their carefully constructed narrative began to crumble under pressure. Then, I held up my hand. Let me tell you what I've learned in the past 24 hours, I said calmly. Grandpa Frank left the farmhouse property with the intention that it remain in the family. Dad, you created Lakeside Properties as a shell company to sell it instead, using the proceeds to pay for Tyler's education and fund his business failures. You concealed this from both of us, making me believe I needed to sacrifice for the family while simultaneously robbing us both of our actual inheritance. My mother turned pale. That's not we never meant! Then I continued relentlessly. When you found yourselves in financial difficulty again, perhaps because of Tyler and Vanessa's extravagant lifestyle, perhaps because of your own mismanagement, you concocted this scheme to seize my home using falsified documents about a non-existent trust. Kleinman stood abruptly. These are serious allegations, Miss Harding. Without evidence, oh, I have evidence, Mr. Kleinman. More than enough to bring charges against everyone in this room for conspiracy to commit fraud. Would you like me to show you the property records, the bank transfers, the incorporation documents for Lakeside Properties? Or perhaps you'd be more interested in the recorded confession I'm currently obtaining. The attorney's face drained of color as he registered the implications of my words. This conversation is being recorded, legally, I confirmed. Connecticut is a one-party consent state. Tyler jumped to his feet. You tricked us, your own family. No, Tyler. You tried to steal from me your own family. I met his gaze steadily. The difference is I have the law on my side. My friends chose that moment to make their entrance descending the stairs with perfect dramatic timing. The sight of Meredith, flanked by Harper and Deacon, sent my family into visible panic. I believe you've been introduced to my legal team, I said pleasantly. They've been quite busy uncovering the extent of this conspiracy. Would you like to know what else we found? The second mortgage on your house Mom and Dad taken out to pay for Tyler's wedding. The credit cards opened in my name without my knowledge. The tax returns claiming deductions for a family. Trust that never existed. My father stood his face ashen. Cassidy, please, we can explain. Save it for your own attorney. Meredith cut in, stepping forward. You're going to need one. A good one. For the first time in my life, I saw real fear in my father's eyes. Not concern or worry, but genuine terror at the consequences of his actions finally catching up to him. What do you want? He asked hoarsely. I looked around at the family that had shaped me, betrayed me, and underestimated me. The answer came with perfect clarity. I want you to leave my house and never return. I want written admissions of what you've done, notarized and placed in secure storage. I want financial restitution for any funds taken in my name. And I want the truth, all of it right now, about why you've treated me as less than Tyler my entire life. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, unexpectedly, my mother began to cry. It was never supposed to be like this, she whispered. We never meant for it to go so far. Hey, everyone, I can feel the tension building in this family showdown. I know you're probably on the edge of your seat wondering what secrets are about to be revealed. Before we continue with my mother's confession, I'd love to know if you've ever experienced family betrayal in your own life. Drop a comment below about your most shocking family drama moment, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more true stories like this one. Trust me, what happens next changed my entire understanding of my family forever. My mother's tears had always been a powerful weapon in our family dynamic, the signal that discussions were over, that feelings had been hurt, that whatever path we were on needed to be abandoned in favor of peace. I had spent my life responding to those tears with immediate contrition regardless of the circumstances. Not today. The truth, Mom, I insisted, my voice steady. All of it. She dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, one I had given her for Christmas years ago. It goes back further than you know. Before you were even born. My father moved to interrupt her, but she waved him off with surprising firmness. No, James. It's time. She deserves to know. The room fell silent, as my mother straightened her shoulders, suddenly looking older and smaller than I'd ever seen her. Your grandfather Frank had very specific ideas about legacy, she began. When your father and I married, Frank made it clear that the family name and family property was to be passed down through male heirs. It was non-negotiable. That's hardly unusual for his generation, I pointed out. But what does that have to do with this situation? We had been trying for a baby for 3 years, my mother continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Frank was getting impatient. He had set up a trust fund for his future grandson, not granddaughter, specifically grandson, that would provide for education, business investments, and eventually property. But it came with conditions. My father took up the thread, his voice rough with emotion I couldn't identify. If we didn't produce a male heir by the time I turned 30, the entire inheritance would go to my cousin Robert and his sons. Frank didn't believe in women running businesses or owning significant property. He called it unnatural. I felt a chill creep up my spine. So, when I was born, we were devastated, my mother admitted. Not because we didn't want you, we did desperately. But Frank made it clear that a granddaughter wasn't enough. He gave us 5 more years to have a boy. The implications were beginning to dawn on me. So Tyler's birth was a relief, my father said simply. Frank immediately established the trust in Tyler's name. Your grandfather doted on him from the moment he was born. The golden boy, the heir. My mother reached for my hand. This time I didn't pull away. We never meant to treat you differently, Cassidy. But Frank's influence was pervasive. He monitored everything, your education choices, Tyler's opportunities. If we appeared to favor you in any way, he would threaten to alter the trust. So you let me believe I needed to sacrifice for the family when actually you were all sacrificing me to satisfy Grandpa's outdated values. The bitterness in my voice was unmistakable. It wasn't that simple, my father protested. We tried to protect you both. When Frank died, we thought things would change. But by then, the patterns were set. And the truth is, he hesitated, glancing at my mother. The truth is, she continued for him, the trust wasn't as substantial as Frank had led us to believe. The farmhouse property was all that was left. Your grandfather had gambled away most of his fortune in his final years. Tyler, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. I didn't know any of this. About the farmhouse, about the conditions on the inheritance. Dad always just said that Grandpa wanted me to have a legacy property someday. I turned to my brother, studying his face. There was genuine confusion there, mixed with the entitled expectation I'd grown accustomed to seeing. So you didn't know about the fraudulent documents, about Dad's company selling the original property? No, he said, then faltered. Well, not at first. Vanessa and I were having problems after we got engaged. Her family expected certain financial guarantees. Vanessa flushed but didn't contradict him. Dad told me about the house being mine by right. After I explained our situation, he said he'd take care of the details. Tyler at least had the decency to look ashamed. It sounded legitimate when he explained it, something about Grandpa's intentions and family tradition. And you never questioned why we needed false documents if it was so legitimate, I challenged. I wanted to believe it, he admitted quietly. My whole life I've been told I was special, that I deserved certain things because I was the Harding son. It's hard to unlearn that. The attorney Kleinman had been inching toward the door during this family revelation. Meredith smoothly stepped into his path. Going somewhere, counselor. I believe we still have matters to discuss regarding your participation in this fraud. He swallowed hard. I was merely acting on information provided by my clients. If there was any misrepresentation, save it. Harper cut in. Your ethical violations are clear. The Bar Association will be very interested in your explanation. I turned back to my parents, a lifetime of questions crystallizing into one. If you knew the trust was nearly empty, if you knew Grandpa's wishes were unfair, why continue the charade all these years? Why not just tell us both the truth and let us make our own way? My father couldn't meet my eyes. We had already mortgaged our future on the story your sacrifices, Tyler's entitlement. Changing course seemed impossible. And then when you became successful on your own, it seemed like validation that the system was working. Working, I repeated incredulously. I succeeded despite being treated as less than my brother my entire life, and you call that working? No, my mother said softly. We were wrong. So terribly wrong. We let Frank's prejudices shape our family long after he was gone. And when your father sold the farmhouse to cover Tyler's expenses and our retirement shortfall, we told ourselves it was what Frank would have wanted, supporting the male heir at any cost. Then when you bought this beautiful home, my father continued, Tyler started having problems with Vanessa's family. The wedding was going to fall through. We saw an opportunity to fix everything at once. By stealing my house, I finished for him. By restoring the natural order, he corrected, then winced at his own words. At least that's how we justified it to ourselves. Continuing Frank's legacy, Vanessa suddenly stood smoothing her designer slacks with trembling hands. This is all very enlightening family history, but it doesn't change the fact that Tyler and I need somewhere to live. My parents have frozen our accounts until we can demonstrate financial stability. The entitled audacity of her statement after everything that had been revealed left me momentarily speechless. Tyler tugged at her arm, trying to get her to sit down, but she shook him off. We had an understanding, she hissed at my father. You promised us this house would solve everything. The understanding was based on fraud, Meredith pointed out coldly, and is therefore null and void. I studied my sister-in-law, seeing her clearly perhaps for the first time. You married my brother knowing his financial situation was precarious, believing that my house would somehow become yours. She lifted her chin defiantly. I married him because I loved him. The house was simply insurance. That's enough, I said, rising to my feet. I felt strangely calm, as if watching the scene from a distance. I've heard enough to understand exactly what's happened here. I walked to the bay window overlooking the front yard where the moving truck still waited. The sight of it, the physical manifestation of my family's betrayal, crystallized my resolve. Here's what's going to happen, I announced, turning back to face them. You will all sign legally binding statements acknowledging what you've done and relinquishing any claim to my property. You will return any funds taken in my name with interest. Mr. Kleinman will face the consequences of his ethical violations, and if we refuse, my father challenged, though his voice lacked conviction. Meredith stepped forward, tablet in hand. Then we proceed with criminal charges. Wire, fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, the list is quite extensive. I estimate a minimum of 5 years imprisonment for the primary conspirators. The color drained from my parents' faces. You wouldn't, my mother whispered. Not to your own family. You were willing to make me homeless today, I reminded her, while claiming to love me. So yes, I absolutely would. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room as the reality of their situation sank in. Finally, Tyler spoke up. I'll sign whatever you want, he said, not looking at our parents or at Vanessa. I was wrong. We were all wrong. One by one, they conceded, shoulders slumping in defeat. Kleinman was the last holdout, but even he eventually agreed to cooperate rather than face disbarment and potential criminal charges. As Meredith and Harper began preparing the necessary documents, I stepped into the kitchen for a moment. Alone hands braced against the marble countertop I'd selected with such care when renovating. The weight of the day of decades of family dynamics suddenly exposed and inverted threatened to overwhelm me. Deacon followed me, his quiet presence surprisingly comforting. "For what it's worth," he said, "you've handled this with remarkable grace." I laughed softly, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "I don't feel graceful. I feel gutted." "That's understandable. Finding out your entire family history is built on deception would shake anyone." He hesitated, then added, "What will you do now? About them, I mean." I considered the question carefully. "I honestly don't know. Part of me wants to cut them out of my life entirely. Another part recognizes that they were also victims of my grandfather's toxic values in their own way." "You don't have to decide everything today," he reminded me gently. I nodded, straightening my shoulders. "Today is for reclaiming what's mine. Tomorrow, we'll see." The weeks following the confrontation passed in a blur of legal documents, tearful phone calls from my mother that I mostly let go to voicemail, and the strange, empty feeling of victory tinged with loss. My home remained mine, but the foundations of my family had been irreparably fractured. Kleinman surrendered his law license rather than face a formal investigation. My parents signed over a significant portion of their retirement savings to compensate me for the financial damages and manipulation. Tyler and Vanessa separated their relationship, apparently unable to survive the collapse of their house of cards. I threw myself into work, expanding my marketing firm into new territories, winning clients that had previously seemed beyond my reach. Success was the best revenge, I told myself, even as I struggled with insomnia and unexpected bouts of grief for the family I thought I had. One rainy Tuesday, about a month after everything had imploded, I was working late at my office downtown when my assistant buzzed to tell me someone was asking to see me. "He doesn't have an appointment, but he says he's your brother." A knot formed in my stomach. "Send him in." Tyler looked different, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, and a humility in his posture I'd never seen before. He carried a cardboard box that he set carefully on my desk. "What's this?" I asked, not touching it. "Everything I could find," he said quietly. "Photos, letters, documents from Grandpa Frank that Dad kept hidden. I thought you should have them." I eyed the box warily. "Why now, I've been doing a lot of thinking," he admitted, sinking into the chair across from me. "About how I never questioned why things were so much easier for me than for you. About how I just accepted that I deserved special treatment. And I'm sorry, Cass. Not just for the house thing, but for a lifetime of taking advantage of you." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. "I'm seeing a therapist now, trying to unlearn some pretty toxic stuff about what it means to be a man, to be a Harding." I leaned back in my chair, studying my brother's face for signs of manipulation. Finding none, I cautiously asked, "What about Vanessa gone?" He said simply. "Back to her parents' place in Greenwich. Turns out when you're not the golden ticket to a free house, you lose some of your appeal." Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy. "I'm sorry," he shrugged. "Don't be. It's all part of the reckoning, right? Facing who I really am without all the props." An uncomfortable silence fell between us. Finally, I gestured to the box. "What exactly am I going to find in here? Like I said, everything Dad kept hidden, including—" He hesitated, then plunged ahead. "Including letters from Grandpa Frank to Dad after you were born. They're hard to read. The way he talks about you, about women in general." "I'm not surprised," I said, though the thought of reading my grandfather's dismissal of my very existence made my stomach churn. "There's something else," Tyler added. "Something I don't think even Mom knows. I found it when I was cleaning out the storage unit after everything fell apart." He reached into the box and pulled out a yellowed envelope, handing it to me with uncharacteristic gentleness. "It's from Grandma Rose, dated a few weeks before she died. She wrote it to you, but Dad intercepted it." My hands trembled slightly as I opened the envelope and unfolded the fragile paper inside. My grandmother's elegant handwriting filled the page. My dearest Cassidy, by the time you read this, I will be gone. There are truths you deserve to know, truths your grandfather and father have worked hard to conceal. Frank wasn't always the bitter, controlling man you knew. His transformation began when his business partner, a woman named Eleanor Davis, outmaneuvered him in a property deal in 1975. His pride never recovered from being bested by a woman. It became his mission to ensure that women in our family knew their place. I fought against his influence, but in those days, wives had little power. When you were born so strong, so bright, I saw in you everything he feared, the proof that he was wrong about women's capabilities. What he never knew, what I protected with my silence, was that the Harding fortune was never truly his alone. Half of everything came from my family, the Whitfields. Under the terms of my father's will, those assets should have passed directly to the eldest Harding child upon my death, regardless of gender. Frank altered documents. Your father helped him. They've hidden your rightful inheritance all these years. The proof is in a safe deposit box at First National Bank box number 427. The key is enclosed with this letter. Reclaim what is yours, my darling girl, and know that I have always been so very proud of you. With all my love, Grandma Rose. I stared at the letter, then at Tyler, then back at the letter. Is there a key? He shook his head. No. Dad must have kept it. But the bank might still have records of the box even after all this time. My mind was racing, connecting dots across decades of family history. Does Dad know you found this? No, Tyler said firmly. Then I'm not going to tell him. This is between you and me now. I carefully refolded the letter, trying to process its implications. Why are you doing this, Tyler? Why now? He was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. Because I finally understand what Grandpa and Dad could never accept, that you were always the true Harding heir. Not because of gender or tradition or some outdated family hierarchy, but because of who you are, how you live, the integrity you've shown even when we gave you every reason to become as ruthless as they were. Unexpected tears pricked at my eyes. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. He stood hesitating before adding, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Cass, or your trust, but I'd like the chance to earn both back someday. As he turned to leave, I found myself calling after him. Tyler. He paused at the door, looking back at me expectantly. Thank you, I said, simply, for the truth. After he left, I sat for a long time staring at the box of family secrets, at the letter that might lead to yet another layer of betrayal and potential redemption. Tomorrow I would call First National Bank. Tomorrow I would continue unraveling the tangled legacy of the Harding family. But tonight, for the first time since the moving truck had appeared in my driveway, I felt something like peace. The house was mine. The truth, at least some of it, was finally coming to light. And somehow, against all odds, my brother had taken the first tentative step toward becoming someone I might eventually be able to call family again. The Harding legacy, it seemed, was still being written. And this time I would be the one holding the pen. 6 months after discovering my grandmother's letter, I stood on the wraparound porch of my Victorian home, watching as the autumn leaves danced across the lawn. So much had changed since that fateful day when my family had arrived with a moving truck and fraudulent documents, thinking they could simply claim what was mine. The safe deposit box had indeed still existed at First National Bank. After providing documentation and working through considerable red tape, I had finally gained access to its contents, the original Whitfield family trust documents, proving that a substantial portion of what became known as the Harding fortune rightfully belonged to me as the eldest grandchild. The revelation had sent shockwaves through what remained of our family. My father initially denied everything, then tried to justify his actions, and finally retreated into a resentful silence that had yet to break. My mother, caught between loyalty to her husband and guilt over her role in the deception, had begun making tentative efforts to rebuild our relationship. Small gestures, like birthday cards and occasional texts that acknowledged the wrongdoing without asking outright for forgiveness. Tyler had surprised everyone, including himself. After hitting what he called his rock bottom, sleeping on a friend's couch, working entry-level jobs for the first time in his life, he had slowly begun reconstructing his identity, apart from the entitlement that had defined it for so long. He was now taking business courses at the community college and had recently secured an apartment of his own, refusing any financial help I had cautiously offered. "I need to do this myself," he had insisted, during one of our monthly coffee meetings, a new tradition that felt fragile but genuine. "I need to know I can." The legal battle over the Whitfield Trust had eventually settled with a significant financial recovery for me, though the emotional cost of further family fracturing had sometimes made me question whether pursuing it had been worth it. Meredith had reminded me during one particularly difficult day that the truth was always worth it, however painful. "This isn't about the money," she'd said. "It's about honoring your grandmother's wishes and breaking the cycle of deception." She was right, of course. The money had never been the point. What mattered was reclaiming my place in my own family narrative, understanding at last why I had always been cast in the supporting role rather than recognized as the capable, independent woman my grandmother had seen in me from the beginning. Today I was hosting a small gathering, not a family reunion exactly, but something adjacent to it. Tyler would be coming. My mother had accepted the invitation after some hesitation. My father had declined. Vanessa, last I'd heard, had become engaged to a hedge fund manager in Greenwich, apparently finding her golden ticket after all. Meredith and Harper would be there as well, along with Deacon, whose quiet strength during the investigation had evolved into something more personal over the intervening months. We were taking things slowly, both of us careful with the fragile connection forming between us. As I set out glasses on the porch table, I caught sight of a car turning into my driveway, Tyler arriving early as he'd promised to help with preparations. Watching him wave as he approached, I reflected on how strange life's turns could be. The brother who had tried to take everything from me was now the family member I felt closest to, our shared experience of disillusionment creating an unexpected bond. The woman I had been a year ago, the perfect sister always sacrificing, always putting family first, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger. Someone who understood that true family loyalty wasn't about blind sacrifice, but about honesty, reciprocity, and respect. My house remained mine more deeply and truly than ever before. Not just because my name was on the deed, but because I had fought for it, had refused to be written out of my own story. The walls that had witnessed my family's betrayal now stood as testament to my resilience. As Tyler climbed the porch steps, I greeted him with a genuine smile. We were writing a new chapter now, one where the Harding legacy would be defined not by outdated traditions or gender-based discrimination, but by the values we chose to carry forward. It wasn't a perfect ending, life rarely offers those, but it was a resolution I could live with, one that honored my grandmother's belief in me and my own hard-won understanding of what family could and should be. That's the end of my story, everyone. It's been quite the journey from that shocking day when my brother showed up with a moving truck to now hosting him on my porch as we rebuild something new from the ruins of our old family dynamic. Have you ever experienced a family betrayal that ultimately led to positive change in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you found my family drama as wild as I did living through it. Subscribe for more real-life stories about family karma and justice served, and share with someone who might need to hear that. Sometimes family betrayal can be the beginning of a stronger, more authentic life. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, that sometimes the most important family legacy isn't what's written in legal documents, but the truth and self-respect we claim for ourselves. Until next time.